One of the greatest questions or biggest questions I've got as a voiceover artist or since I started interacting with people concerning voiceover is,
do I need a great voice to be a great voiceover artist?
and the answer is quite simple, it's no. But you see, people don't believe. They'll be like, but you've got a great voice, why did you go into voiceover? Or, I heard the other voiceover artists, they sound great. I think the dilemma comes from the kind of definition we've given to voiceover in our minds and the limitations we have of voiceover. So when people hear voiceover artists, they go, oh, you do commercials, you do documentaries. But voiceover is way bigger than that. Voiceover cuts across a lot of genres than documentaries and narrations and commercials. It's way more than that. But to help you, because even after I've said no, to convince you, let me take you through history so that you understand why you think that way. Then I'll tell you what to do to change your mind, okay? So voiceover actually began in broadcasting, that is radio and TV. There were people who worked in the radio stations that were called announcers. And these announcers were people who were trained to make announcements or read the news. So let's still go back to the beginning of radio and TV. So when it began, most of the time what you would see on TV back in the early days were dramas, because during those days TV and radio was scripted or timed to the T. So every second counted, like everything was timed. So even the drama scripts were timed. So you had so much of drama, opera, and all of that. So it was much more of performance. And then came the World War and introduced news to it. So now TV carried news in it. There was no commercial yet. But along the line, as it began to expand and more persons began purchasing this particular tool of communication, advertising crept in. And now when advertising came in, people wanted to advertise the products. They needed someone to tell people about those products. And guess who they met? You're correct, the announcers. So the announcers were tasked with the job of getting these getting these products out there. So you hear something like, get one of these toothpaste next week, or coming to a shop near you. And then movie trailers as well. In the world, the year, she never slept so good before. Stuff like that. So it began evolving, and it kept on changing and changing and changing and changing and changing. Much more persons came into the industry, and we had so many announcers, so it became like a culture. That was the way radio people talked. Radio presenters talked that way. Radio announcers talked that way. So you would hear stuff like, and way back bringing you new music all the way from 19th. Well, it's taking me back. So let me try something like this. And then I play the song in my head. So you hear stuff like, it's Saturday night. Take you back to Sunday morning. How you doing? Tell me what to do for you. You can hit me up on 08. And that kind of, you get what I'm saying, don't worry. It has left me. So, but you get what I'm saying. So they had that whole acting stuff added to it. It was all about spice and the groove. And that was the way announcements were. So movies began to evolve. Remember, so animations came on board, but they were not voiced. Remember, TV was voiceless at first. Radio was what was voiced all through. So by the time animations were now being recorded with the voices, they needed people to do those voices. And people began doing those voices. But those voices were never good voices. Sometimes they were animal voices. There were voices that sounded much more different.
Oh, there were voices that sounded like this.
Oh, they sounded like this. So, this was different.
Oh, this is that Alice I want to go to the hill.
So they had different voices. Like, already I'm showing you that you can use your voice to do a lot. So you had voices creeping in, but still, advertising and announcements were the major ones that got to people's attention because they were conscious of the fact that this was voiced, right? In animation, you somehow feel like that character really has that voice. So people continued with that, the trend kept on going. But along the line, things began to change. Communication the world began to enclose, especially with the internet. So the world began to get more closer, people began to interact much more in a smaller space. So the world was much more connected. So that external way of talking where you feel a bit distant from the person needed to be eliminated because people now wanted to feel connected because devices and communication was now allowing them to feel connected. And so advertising began to change. Even radio presenter, I can tell you as a radio presenter, you can't do what they were doing in the 70s, no matter how nice it sounded. You can do it now. You would sound distant from your listeners. You would sound like someone who's acting the film and they know, but back in the day, that's what people wanted to hear. So that was it. So as the internet and every other tool of communication began to bring people much more closer, also, their mindset about how they wanted to hear things changed. So advertising changed, all of that changed, and nobody really wants a distant voiceover actor or a voiceover talent. People want to hear you as though you're the one talking to them. Not that announcer shouting at them, buy this at $5.59, or when you go up to the store. What do you buy this at $5.59 when you go up to the store? They want to hear a relatable voice. Now, I've tried to convince you why you think that way. So, having known that this was all just a product of broadcasting, and that is why people still think it's that way. When it comes to doing voices, for those in Nigeria, you would know Nollywood. Back then, Nollywood movie trailers used to sound like this. There'll be a voice that'll do. There'll be instrumentals. Yeah. Yes, so country people, this one original, this one is yes, you hear something say featuring Pet Edochie, and you hear that voice. That's not a nice voice. That guy's voice was nothing close to being nice, and you also know hypo go hypo, yes so, and you know that one as well. And I can give you several instances where voiceover wasn't nice voice. But somehow, we still stick to the commercial, even though not all commercials have nice voices, but we still stick to the, I need to sound like this, I need to talk like this, I need to know how to speak English correctly. You need to know that, please. You need to, if not, you wouldn't really be able to do certain commercials. Just imagine you pronouncing it Benin instead of benign. It was a funny example that happened one time ago. So, that's one of the examples. So you need to get yourself acquainted with the language, whatever language you're using. I have friends that do voiceovers in about 3-4 languages, and I am so shocked when I get to see what they can do. I can only do voiceover in one language, so already I have a limit. But I have a deep voice, which people say it's nice, and I'm like, okay, thank you. But that can be a limitation for me if I don't learn how to expand my voice to be able to not just do a good voice.
What if they wanted me to talk like this? What will I do?
I say, I don't know how to talk like that. So you need to know that in animation, so Scooby-Doo, who did the voice? Most of the animation characters, don't have nice voices. If you really start thinking about it, and those characters were played by voiceover artists in video games. If you want to move backwards a bit, sound effects sometimes are human voices. So, if you just keep on moving down the lane, you just find out that you don't need a good voice to be a good voiceover actor. You just need to know how to use your instrument very well. Just the same way you don't need to be told to know how to play basketball. You just need to know how to use your height. Because you can be taller than someone, yet the person plays basketball more than you. It's not about the length of your legs or your arms, it's about how skillful you are with those tools. Your voice is your tool. You should know how to use it. You should know where and when to use it. You should know the kind of jobs that fit you and how to get into that space. So if you're not good in English, then stick with Pidgin and be good at it. Know how to do it. Know how. I remember recording with, there was an advert that I was recording some time ago, and there was a Pidgin version, but I wasn't the one doing that. And the guy who was doing the Pidgin, when he did his recording before me, that was my first time being in a studio with someone recording in Pidgin. And man, the energy. This is elephant, we fall from tree. I'm now like, bro, we're in the studio. You don't need to be shouting like that. It's soundproof. It's soundproof. But I could see the energy and I'm like, wow. Now I know why I was doing this thing wrong. I do it like English is calm. Pidgin is witty. Pidgin is agile and gra. So there's a lot of strength and muscular tension. That's the way Pidgin is. Can it be soft sometimes? Yes, it can. So you just need to know how to find that character. What does this character do? Because every language comes with how it is spoken. Imagine me speaking Igbo with English accent. That's wrong. So at the end of the day, what I'm saying is this. You don't need a good voice. You just need to know how to use the voice that you have. So join me as I expose more secrets and tips on how to be a good voiceover artist. Thank you. And don't forget to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel to go a long way in supporting me.